This video is meant to educate you about the different dynasties of ancient China. To start off with, I'm going to give you some background information about ancient China. Ancient China was made up of 3 dynasties. The first of these was the Xia, who were considered fiction for a long time and were only confirmed to be real very recently. The Xia kingdom was established by Yu the engineer, who implemented flood control and constructed dams, dikes, and floodgates. This is important because it was said that pre-Xia China was ravaged by a series of major floods from the Yellow River. This completely devastated the population. After the Xia came the Shang, who ruled over most of northern China. They developed the aristocracy that carried on for a long time in Chinese history and created the writing system which is the basis of modern-day Chinese. After the Shang came the Zhou, who were the longest-lasting dynasty in Chinese history, albeit with a very light rule.
Early Chinese writing was used as a tool of government and as a way to express ideas and offer reflections on human beings and their world. Writing was used later for trade, and unfortunately, several documents from the Shang dynasty were unrecoverable as they were written on bamboo, which perished. However, writings on oracle bones give us insight on this dynasty.
With high mountain ranges and deserts between China and other societies in India and Southwest Asia, trade was slightly delayed and limited. However, trade networks linked China with lands to the west and south. From these connections, early civilizations in China obtained jade from Central Asia, military technology such as horse-drawn chariots through Central Asia from Mesopotamia, and tin and cowrie shells from Southeast Asia. Cowrie shells also began to become a currency used in China. In exchange, early Chinese civilizations traded Shang pottery.
During the late years of the 3rd millennium BCE, larger regional states began to emerge, the most important being the Xia, Shang, and Zhao dynasties. The Xia dynasty was established somewhere around 2200 BCE. Ancient legends credit the sage king Yu as the founder of this dynasty, as he was a heroic legend who controlled the flooding of the Yellow River. The capital of the state was most likely Erlito, as indicated by archaeological remains of the city. The reason for the creation of this larger state was to have an overruling power to settle disputes that would arise between small villages, usually about irrigation. The Shang dynasty arose in the south and east areas surrounding Xia, and many written records and materials have been recovered from this time. To justify overthrowing the Shang dynasty, the Zhou dynasty proposed the idea of the mandate of heaven. This stated that heavenly powers gave them the right to rule.
In ancient China, there was an absence of organized religion and official priests. Instead, they believed in a patriarchal society where the head of the family, usually a man, proceeded at rites and ceremonies. This person acted as a mediator between the living and the departed relatives in a family, holding tremendous authority. One important aspect of their beliefs was the veneration of ancestors. They believed that spirits of their ancestors had the power to protect and support the family, only if descendants respected and attended to the spirit's needs. When burying ancestors, they also buried valuable material goods and offered food and drink as sacrifices. With a strong sense of ancestors' presence and influence, a strong ethic of family solidarity came about. Families believed that they could only be successful if all their members, deceased and living, were working towards a common goal. A family was well linked from those of past generations to those living and unborn. Furthermore, there were also several ancient Chinese legends of heroic figures such as the 3 sage kings, King Yao, Shun, and Yu, responsible for inventing agriculture, domesticating animals, creating music, introducing the calendar, instructing the people in arts and crafts, and teaching people to marry and live in families.
Societies also became involved in profitable sea routes. They used large oar-propelled vessels with supported fishing and trade with offshore islands. During the Shang dynasty, Chinese ships traveled across the Yellow Sea to Korea navigated by stars and other heavenly bodies, and shipbuilding became a prominent business along coastal China.
Excavations at one of the Shang dynasty's earliest capitals, Ao, gives us insight on architecture during this time period. The most significant feature of this site is the city wall, which originally stood at 33 feet high with a base of about 66 feet. The wall was made of layers of pounded earth. Pounded earth was a technique they used where they would firmly pack soil between wooden forms and then pound it with mallets until it reached a rock-like hardness before adding a new layer of soil on top. This technique can produce very durable buildings, and the technique is still used in the countryside of North China. Modern estimates say that the wall would have required 10,000 men working for almost 20 years.
One school of thought was the Confucianism. Confucius, who lived during the Zhao dynasty, laid the foundations of what became the Confucian thought, which explained the correct ordering of society. A concern that Confucius had was the balance of harmony within the society, between heaven and earth, and between humans and the natural world. This was one of the most well-known works from this time period and provides intellectual foundation for generations to come.
The Yellow River is located at the high plateau of Tibet and is known as China's Sorrow because of its extensive flooding, which destroyed fields, communities, and anything else in its path. However, the Yellow River helped the development of Chinese society as it provided a water source and carried in a type of nutrient-rich silt known as loess, which was extremely fertile and easy to work with. This soil even allowed cultivators still using wooden implements to bring in extremely generous harvests.
Shang's capital Yin, Ivish tombs were created for Shang kings, and with the deceased, thousands of objects were buried, including chariots, weapons, bronze goods, pottery, carvings of jade, ivory, and cowrie shells. Also, sacrificial victims including dogs, horses, and scores of humans were placed in the grave to serve the deceased royal in another existence.
Oracle bones were mainly used by fortune tellers who would write a question on the shoulder blade bone of a sheep and subject it to heat. Next, they would interpret the cracks in the bone as a result of the heat and write the answers to the questions based on the interpretations of the cracks. Through oracle bones, we can tell that the people of the Shang dynasty often had concerns about the amount of rain to come and the future success of their harvest. Early Chinese writing used pictographs to symbolize an object and combined several pictographs to make an ideograph, which represented a more complex idea. Modern Chinese writing is a direct descendant of Shang writing. Other non-political purposes for writing came later in the Zhao dynasty. Books of poetries, songs, history, and manuals of divination and ritual were written, as well as essays dealing with moral, religious, philosophical, and political themes.
Some of the most well-known works are the reflections of Confucius and other late Zhao thinkers, which set the intellectual foundation of classical Chinese society. Many other writers were all observers of the world and subtle commentators on human affairs. Lots of early Chinese literature and Zhao writings perished as they were either written on bamboo or they were destroyed by the House of Qin because they were believed as useless and with the power to create doubt in government and encourage independent minds.
During the Shang and Zhao dynasties, there were several social classes present. For example, the ruling elites held the most honored positions in Chinese society. They had a lavish consumption of bronze weaponry, utensils, and decorations with detailed designs. This was a symbol of wealth, as bronze was very expensive and separated the elites from the less privileged. Another social class rose from the military allies of the Shang and Zhao rulers, known as hereditary aristocrats. They worked at administrative and military tasks, had extensive landholdings, received elementary education at least, and received manuals of etiquette for dining. Free artisan and craftsmen worked for the elites in specialized labor and enjoyed comfortable existence in strong, sturdy, pounded earth homes.
As agriculture spread to the north and west from the Yellow River, they encountered a large group of pastoral nomads in the steppe lands of Central Asia. These lands were too dry to support agriculture, however they had good grasses to herd animals. With the use of Indo-European technology and techniques such as the use of bronze wagons and domesticated horses, several clusters of nomadic people settled in this area. Nomads in agricultural societies often engage in trade. Nomads depended on agricultural societies for grains and finished goods, such as textiles and metal goods, which they could not produce themselves. In exchange, they offered horses, which flourished on the steppes, and offered their services as links to other societies, since they are in the middle of trade networks spanning all of Central Asia. The two groups always had tense relations and often engaged in bitter wars, as the nomads depended on the wealth of agricultural societies, and agricultural societies felt as if their wealth was being invaded and taken advantage of. These tense relations also existed because nomadic raids had posed a constant threat to northern and western regions of China since the Shang dynasty, and most likely even earlier. In fact, the Zhou state almost crumbled under the pressure of nomadic attacks alone. We now hope that you know everything you need to know about the three ancient dynasties of China.